Good morning, everyone. I will be reading Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. He lets me rest in grassy meadows. He leads me to restful waters. He keeps me alive. He guides me in proper paths for the sake of his good name. Even when I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no danger because you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they protect me. You set table for me right in front of my enemies. You bathe my head in oil. My cup is so full it spills over. Yes, goodness and faithful love will pursue me all the days of my life, and I will live in the Lord's house as long as I live.
Bonjour tout le monde. Buenos dias todos. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be with you this morning. I hope you'll bear with me. I've come down with a bit of a cold in the last couple of days, so I'm hoping that I won't cough too loud into the microphone. But we'll get through it. I'd like to start by just noting that there are handouts on your table, and I'm wondering if we could all together stand up as kind of part of opening the conference here, the gathering. This beginning from Romans 12, I think, is a fabulous way to start a day. It's a fabulous way to have an introduction to a letter, and I think it's a fabulous way to start a Bible study. So if you could stand with me. And I've put a few like little brackets and stuff in there. Just ignore those. We'll just kind of read through as it stands. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your minds, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. Thank you. Do not be conformed, be transformed, so that you may discern. It feels like that's kind of what a church gathering is all about. So we'll return to Romans 12 a bit tomorrow morning. And hopefully I'll make some connections between Psalm 23 and Romans 12 that you may or may not have thought of before. But this morning, we're going to focus on Psalm 23. Before I get into that, just a word of introduction of myself. My name is Suderman. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces here, but I certainly don't know everyone. And for myself, I often say that I'm perhaps the least well-known of my family in a lot of Mennonite circles. So many of you probably know my parents, Jack and Irene. And at least in MCCEZ, when I get invited to a congregation and I meet a family, and usually the introduction is, this is Brian Moyer Suderman's brother. So he's my brother, and my other brother Andrew works in the States with Mennonite Mission Network and Mennonite World Conference. So I teach at Conrad Grebel University College here nearby in Waterloo. I've been there since 2006, I think. I love working there, and I see a number of current students and former students, so it's good to see you. And one other little plug that I'll make, I don't know how many of you know about or use Believers Church Bible commentaries. Do you know about these things? Hands up if you maybe look at, oh, that's fabulous. You probably don't know this, but I'm actually your representative on the council for that commentary series. And so we're excited. After many, many long years, we've got a few volumes left, but they're coming out little by little. But hopefully you'll hear more about that, including the riveting book on Nahum. How many of you have read Nahum? A few? I'm writing the Nahum one, so that should be out in about 2 years. Not exactly the most well-known. But anyway, so this morning, I must admit, this is not actually my favorite mode of doing a Bible study. I tend to like doing a lot of interactive stuff and question and answer and digging together. I hope that we'll have some of that, but hopefully there will be some new insights for you here this morning. We won't read through Psalm 23 together, but I suspect that many of you have some version of this memorized. Okay, so you know this well, but hopefully there will be some new ideas. And so partially what I'm getting at here is that, and I intentionally only gave 3 handouts per table, because for me, Bible study is fundamentally a group activity. And so I encourage you to rub shoulders with the person beside you, comment on things, notice things as you go. That's totally fine. And also, when there's time for table group discussion, I'll probably be wandering around, and if you want to talk about something or have a question or whatever, feel free to flag me down, and we can get into things at that point too. But take a look at your handout there, and I've given you the NRSV just because you have to choose a version. And I've highlighted some things that I just want to make a few comments on before we spend most of our time on the last 2 verses. When I was a kid, I remember being very confused by Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Like, why, if the Lord is my shepherd, why shouldn't I want God? Right? And so I like the NIV's translation, which I give at the bottom. I lack nothing. That's the basic idea, right? The old version of the word want in English. And another one that can be tricky is he makes me lie down. There's actually been quite a bit of work on this, right? That sounds very dominating, very imposed, and we heard a bit about that last night. One of the things that I think is interesting about that is the Hebrew here is he causes me to lie down. It's not so much a force as it is, which I think goes well with the parallel line. About it as life after death or very abstract. And often in the Psalms, it's very, very concrete. Someone is in danger and they're calling out for help, right? So the idea of salvation, for instance, is the idea of liberation or rescue. It's the very same word. So soul is one of those words. And then this one is another one. He leads me in right ways or right paths for his name's sake. The word right here, this is one of those ones that's really interesting because if you're I often can tell, maybe I've got some former students and some former undergrad students here, maybe I'll stereotype a bit and see how they react. But one of the things that's interesting is this is a word that in the NRSV tends to be translated as just or justice, and in the NIV tends to be translated as righteousness. And it's the exact same word. Why is that interesting? Well, I often have students that come in with an NIV, and I'm going to stereotype here just for a second, come in with an NIV and are very interested in personal piety, but don't talk very much about social justice. And they like the word righteousness, and they know their Bibles inside and out. And then I have students that come with an NRSV, and they're all about social justice, and they really like the translation justice, and they don't know their Bible as well. That's a very common occurrence year after year. And so to me, one of the things that's worth thinking about is what happens when we refuse to split those two words together. The word is both justice and righteousness. Right? These are two sides of the same coin. These are not things that are struggling against each other or antithetical or kind of in competition. Right? And then finally, verse 4, even though I walk through the darkest valley, or the valley of the shadow of death, if that was the version that you remember, I fear no evil. That word evil is worth pausing on too, because evil in the Bible, and especially the Old Testament, it can be very abstract, but it can also be very concrete. In different places, this is translated as calamity or disaster, right? So when your house falls down, it is an evil. It's a disaster. When people go off into exile, it's a calamity, right? And so this isn't, again, it's not just some abstract thing. It tends to be much more concrete. But what I'd like to do for most of our time this morning is focus on these last two verses. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. If you flip the page here, the word prepare, I've given another translation. You arrange a table before my face in front of my enemies. What I would like you to do for just a couple minutes is at your table, what do you think is happening in this verse? What does it mean that God sets a table before my face in front of my adversaries? What are some possibilities there? So I invite you to just turn to the people around you. What do you think that is talking, that image, what is happening? Okay, and as you're winding up your conversation, I didn't mention my immediate family before, so some of you know Rebecca, my wife, Zoe and Eden. Our youngest just graduated from Rockway here last year. And I actually am a graduate of Rockway from 1989, so some of the banners above me here, some of them don't go back to 1989, which is kind of frustrating. But of course, every institution I went to were in the habit of building a new gym about 3 or 4 years after I left. So that was the gym that we played in when I was in high school. But let's hear from a few tables. If someone has a nice strong voice, I don't think we have microphones around, but I'll try to repeat from the front. If you could just concisely, oh, there are microphones. Okay, thank you. If you want to come up, I can repeat from here too if you say it nice and loud. But what's going on in this verse? What do you think? Okay, interesting. God provides for us and God makes a way of sitting down with our enemies. Good. Someone else? Okay, interesting. Conflict resolution, yes. Good. A king might, the comment was, a king might look at this or say this, and I'm going to sit at the table and you have to watch. Notice, this is the basic question here, right? Is this an invitation? Is this a moment of reconciliation? Or is this like the way that I often thought of it as a child, this is na-na-na-na boo-boo, you know, I'm with God's favor and you're not kind of thing, like God's choosing sides, and there's definitely lots of that in the Psalms. One thing that I'd like to just highlight is the whole image of a table. This is hospitality language, right? It's really important to recognize that what we have here is hospitality language, and the people are not the host. God sets the table. God is the host, and then inviting people into God's hospitality, right? Think of all the New Testament parables where there's a banquet. This is kind of a very similar kind of image, a similar idea, right? Another thing, we could spend a lot more time on this, which we won't, but did you know that there is no clear word in biblical Hebrew that means order? You've probably all heard order out of chaos, the creation story. There's actually no clear word that means order in biblical Hebrew. This is the closest one that I know of, and it's the word arrange. Set a table. This is the word, and again, my students will probably roll their eyes, but this is the word chesed, a guttural chesed, but this is the word that's often translated as steadfast love, or loving kindness, right? Your goodness, or surely goodness and mercy shall follow me. And the steadfast love here, I went to CMBC back in the day, Canadian Mennonite Bible College, great. And my professor then, Waldemar Jansen, who I still visit when I can make it to Winnipeg, wonderful man, he used to call this stick-to-itive love. Love that refuses to let go. And I think that's a great image. The thing that I want to highlight to you is that this word is not only used for God in the Bible. This is used for God and for people. The challenge is that often when it's used for God, it's translated as steadfast love, and then when it's used for people, it's translated as kindness. And so you miss the connection. But this often has the implication of covenant loyalty, of really being committed to something, right? And then, we're not going to read through all of these, but I've got a few examples. What does it mean to follow me in the Psalms? I'll give you a few examples. So I think I gave you some of these, just the passages, so you can look them up later. But Psalm 7, verse 1. O Lord my God, in you I take refuge. Save me from all my pursuers, those who follow me. Right? Psalm 31:15. My times are in your hand. Deliver me from the hand of my enemies and persecutors, those who follow me. Psalm 35, verse 3. Draw the spear and javelin against my pursuers. This is talking to God. Say to my soul, I am your salvation. Let their way be dark and slippery, with the angel of the Lord pursuing them, chasing them. Right? My point is that this word for follow is actually diligent pursuit. This is like chasing after. And what you have here is this image of goodness and mercy shall pursue me vigorously, like chase me down. A wonderful image. And again, one of the things that I think is interesting there is, and we'll link this up to Romans 12 tomorrow, what happens when you recognize that pursuing someone isn't only God's job? Pursuing with steadfast love, with hesed, with kindness, is something that God certainly does, but it's also something that people can do. Right? And not only that, I know I'm giving you a lot of Hebrew grammar, but I think it's fascinating because it gives a bit of a different window, right? Because another possibility here is that the kind of verb could also be goodness and mercy will pursue me, or goodness and mercy continues to pursue me, goodness and mercy perpetually consume me, goodness and mercy has always pursued me. All of those are possible translations of that phrase. It could be in the future, it could be in the past, it could be in the present. But what's clear is that that goodness and mercy, this steadfast love, this kindness, and one famous Old Testament scholar has a great article where he calls it social solidarity, is in pursuit, chasing after. Right? So what I'd like you to do, we're going to turn now to break into groups, and there's going to be some questions that show up on the screen here. I'd invite you to share your name if you haven't had a chance to do that around your table. Say something about your family, about where you're coming from, and then I'd invite you to respond to a couple of questions, or one main question. Share a story where you have experienced goodness and mercy pursuing you. Sometime in your life, where have you been the one being pursued by goodness and mercy? Good. You've got till about 5 to 10. So you've got 15 minutes. So make sure that you introduce yourselves. You can talk about other things too, but at least make sure that you get to that question.
As you wrap up your conversations, I invite you to sing with us as we sang it last evening.